Chapter 81 Escape. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The monks hanging around the Liangchu border always had secrets. When they saw Zhou Yiqiao bolt, a few brave souls decided to use their own escape tricks to get out of the city, too. Just as they were about to make it through the city gate, a beam of golden light shot down from the sky, blocking their path. Two Yuri sect disciples materialized nearby. Zhou Yiqiao didn't hesitate. He knew he was past the point of no return. He slapped his storage bag, and the Qiushui blade he'd recently refined appeared beside him. He muttered a quick incantation, pouring his spiritual energy into the dagger. The Qiushui blade glowed with an intense green light, seeming to suck the surrounding air into itself, turning it into a razor-sharp weapon aimed right at one of the disciples. Before the disciple could react, the Qiushui blade pierced his head, draining his life force. With that disciple's energy gone, the golden light flickered and died. Zhou Yiqiao seized the chance, fully activating the Gale Sword Seal formation. His speed tripled, and he vanished in the blink of an eye. Damn it, after him, the remaining disciple, who'd been controlling the golden light, looked alarmed and yelled at the other Yuri sect disciples rushing up. Then, he took off after Zhou Yiqiao. These guys might be inner sect members, but they were just regular grunts. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been stuck with such a crummy assignment as guarding the border. Now they'd screwed up big time. If they didn't fix it fast, the sect would come down hard, and every Yuri sect disciple in Gubian City would be in trouble. Zhang Xiongda, still in the thick of the fight, saw someone using the confusion to escape Gubian City and immediately abandoned his battle. He raised his giant axe, cleared a path out of the city, and flew off in the other direction. Zhou Yiqiao, of course, had no idea what was going on behind him. The swift wind sword hummed, slicing through the air, and he covered miles in just a few breaths. He downed a spirit-accumulating pill to replenish his drained spiritual power and, without slowing down, poured what he had into the swift wind sword, becoming a streak of light headed southeast. The spiritual senses locked onto him didn't disappear, so Zhou Yiqiao didn't dare to stop. This was already Chu state territory. Once he hit a city under Chu control, the Yuri sect disciples would have to back off. "You're not getting away," a sharp voice rang out, and one of the spiritual senses suddenly popped up in front of Zhou Yiqiao. "I wasted a space-shifting talisman, I'm gonna make you pay." Zhou Yiqiao's face hardened. He pointed his sword, unleashing a burst of Gingjin sword energy. The Qiushui blade was ice-cold, but with the Gingjin sword energy's golden flare, he closed the distance and took the guy out with one strike. He knew that if he got held up by this guy, the others behind him would catch up in a heartbeat, and he'd be finished. After dealing with his pursuer, Zhou Yiqiao sped off without looking back. Seeing their buddy bite the dust, the remaining pursuers seemed to lose their will to continue. They were locked in a stalemate for days, until Zhou Yiqiao was deep inside Chu state territory, and the tracking signals finally vanished. He kept moving for a few more days. After confirming that they weren't coming, he breathed a sigh of relief, slowed down, and focused on replenishing his spent spiritual power. "Well, I didn't expect a Taoist friend so young to also be a Foundation establishment cultivator." Zhang Xiongda's voice came from the side. Zhou Yiqiao looked over and saw Zhang Xiongda perched on a treetop in the distance, looking down at him. "You're too kind, senior." Zhou Yiqiao replied with a smile, but kept his hand on the storage bag, feeling for the Sikong pan inside. Seeing his expression, Zhang Xiongda raised an eyebrow. "Relax. My beef is with the Yuri sect, and I don't go around killing people. Besides, I was injured by a Yuri sect traitor. I'm not strong enough right now to be a threat." He then pulled open his robes to show a nasty wound on his chest. Zhou Yiqiao's gaze fell on the wound, spotting a deep, bloody gash. Traces of sharp sword energy still lingered around the wound, slowly eating away at the skin, flesh, and bone. Zhou Yiqiao frowned. "May I ask why Senior has been following me?" Zhang Xiongda laughed. "It seems like my Taoist friend has some problems with the Yuri sect as well. I happen to be planning to head to Chu state. I wonder if you'd be willing to give me a lift. Of course, the reward will be worth your while." Zhou Yiqiao shook his head, refusing without hesitation. "Senior, you're joking. I'm just a beginner at Foundation establishment. I can't possibly live up to your expectations. I'll have to pass. Zhou Yiqiao turned to leave, but Zhang Xiongde stopped him again. Wait a second, Taoist friend. Jinhuang City is 100 miles ahead in Chu Kingdom. At our speed, we can reach it in less than half an hour. We can discuss this after we arrive in Jinhuang City. What do you say? That this desolate area was the only way to get into the heart of Chu State after leaving Liang State. Instead of being on edge after turning this guy down, it might be better to go with him and keep an eye on him. Zhou Yiqiao thought for a moment and finally nodded. I'll take your advice, senior. Zhang Xiongde was pleased and laughed, ignoring his injured chest. In that case, I thank you in advance, friend. I'll go first, so you can feel at ease. Zhang Xiongde took the lead, flying off with his sword. Zhou Yiqiao stayed on the swift-wind sword, always a mile behind him. Even though Zhang Xiongde was badly hurt, he was fast. If Zhou Yiqiao, with his perfect Tiandao foundation, didn't have pure spiritual power, he'd have been left in the dust, even after taking a spirit-accumulating pill. In just 3/4 of an hour, they were near Jinhuang City. Jinhuang City was indeed an important Chu State border town. The whole city was pretty impressive, much more prosperous than many cities under the Liang royal family. The difference in strength between the two countries was clear. Unlike Liang Kingdom, Jinhuang City was a place where immortals and mortals lived side by side. The streets were a maze of shops, lined up one after another, and the area was buzzing with people and noise. After Zhang Xiongde took Zhou Yiqiao into Jinhuang City, he entered a restaurant and found a private room. The owner quickly brought the meal and a bottle of elixir to treat the wound. Zhang Xiongde didn't hesitate and drank the elixir right in front of Zhou Yiqiao. After a while, the sharp sword energy around Zhang Xiongde's wound began to dissipate. Once the injury was under control, Zhang Xiongde poured a glass of spiritual wine for Zhou Yiqiao and said with a smile. I believe my Taoist friend can guess who I am. Chapter 82 Invitation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhou Yiqiao took the wine glass respectfully, nodding as if he understood. If I had to guess, you're from the Chu Kingdom, right? Zhang Xiongde laughed heartily. That's right. For someone so young to have already established a foundation, you're definitely sharp. Zhou Yiqiao simply smiled, and Zhang Xiongde continued, you're spot on. I'm with the Xianwei army of Chu. I'm in Liang State on orders from the Chu Emperor. He trailed off, suddenly stopping short. Zhou Yiqiao took a sip of his wine, saying nothing. Since it involved Chu's military secrets, he didn't want to pry and get caught in the middle of a potential conflict between the two countries. Zhang Xiongde had hoped to pique Zhou Yiqiao's interest, prompting him to ask questions and giving Zhang Xiongde the upper hand. He didn't expect Zhou Yiqiao to be so cautious and realized the guy was shrewd, so he decided to cut to the chase. I'll get straight to the point. I want to invite you to join Chu and serve our holy emperor. Chu was unlike Liang. The Chu royal family were immortal cultivators. The current Chu emperor was an immortal, only a little over 400 years old and a great cultivator in the late nascent soul stage. Since taking the throne, the Chu emperor worked hard, unifying Chu's internal factions in less than a century and conquering several surrounding countries. Its power was second to none in Yanzhou. The Chu emperor was known for his ability to recognize talent. Many independent cultivators were willing to join his empire, and the Xianwei army was composed of those very people. Zhang Xiongde continued, everyone knows the holy emperor will unify Yanzhou eventually. Joining the Xianwei army now means a chance at a good position later. Zhou Yiqiao didn't immediately respond. Instead, he asked, a little confused, I'm just a nobody. Why would you value me so much? Zhang Xiongde shook his head. Don't sell yourself short. Foundation establishment at your age? Your talent and luck are exceptional. You have a bright future. The fact that you took down that Yari sect disciple with one strike is reason enough to join the Xianwei army. Zhou Yiqiao frowned but remained non-committal. With the moonstone dimension, he had no need for spirit stones and didn't want to be tied down by a sect or organization. You flatter me. I barely escaped the Yari sect using a hidden card. I don't compare to you. Truthfully, I want to head to Central Continent to see the more advanced world of cultivation. I have no plans to stay in Chu. Zhou Yiqiao politely declined. Instead of being disappointed, Zhang Xiongde laughed. The Central Immortal Territory is rich in spiritual energy, beautiful, and full of powerful cultivators. It's a paradise for cultivators. But if you want to go to the Central Immortal Territory, you should join our Xianwei army and serve the Holy Emperor. Zhou Yiqiao raised his eyebrows. Care to explain? Zhang Xiongde took a long drink before saying, Yanzhou is in the northwest of Tianshan realm, and Zhuozhou Island sits between us and the Central Immortal realm. Zhuozhou is demon territory. If human cultivators like us try to cross it without incredible power, we're just asking for trouble. The only way for Yanzhou cultivators to reach the Central Immortal Territory is through the 4 teleportation formations in Yanzhou. And our Chu royal family controls 2 of them. Zhang Xiongde paused, watching Zhou Yiqiao. Seeing no reaction, he continued. The other 2 are in disrepair and can't be used. Maintaining the teleportation arrays is expensive. Only those who work for the Holy Emperor have the opportunity to reach the Central Continent Immortal Territory. Zhou Yiqiao finally showed some interest. After a moment, he asked, if I join the Xianwei army, when could I go to Central Continent? Seeing that Zhou Yiqiao was warming up, Zhang Xiongde drank his wine with a pleased expression. After joining, you get a jade token every 30 years. With that, you can teleport to Lioli Imperial City, Chu's capital. Of course, if you do something great for the Holy Emperor in that time, you can ask for a token as a reward. Zhou Yiqiao cautiously asked, what would I have to do after joining the Xianwei army? Zhang Xiongde took a bite of food and said, the Xianwei army is huge, so not everyone's needed on the front lines. If you have a skill, you can stay in the rear, but there are fewer chances for glory. But for us independent cultivators, we rely on battlefield contributions for resources, and logistics positions are often open. Zhou Yiqiao understood and cupped his fists. In that case, I accept your invitation. Hearing that Zhou Yiqiao agreed, Zhang Xiongde grinned. He'd always believed he had a good eye. From the moment he saw Zhou Yiqiao in Gubian City, he knew there was something different about him. Now that he'd finally managed to win him over, he filled their cups and raised his glass. Happy to have you as a brother. Zhou Yiqiao raised his cup and drank. After drinking, Zhang Xiongde said, after this, I'll take you to the Xianwei Army Recruitment Office in Zhenhuang City, and then we'll go to the imperial capital to report. Zhou Yiqiao nodded. Later that evening, Zhang Xiongde and Zhou Yiqiao walked out of the Xianwei Army Recruitment Office in Zhenhuang City. Brother Zhou, you're one of us now. Zhang Xiongde handed Zhou Yiqiao a bronze medal, the Xianwei Army badge, smiling and patting his shoulder. Since we're colleagues now, let's not waste any time. We'll head to the imperial capital to report. Zhang Xiongde grabbed Zhou Yiqiao and headed toward the city gate. Because they were at the recruitment point, the cloud-stepping horse was already prepared for them. They mounted the cloud-stepping horse and flew toward the imperial capital. Chapter 83 Taking Office. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The glazed imperial city is enormous and incredibly vibrant. Its walls, crafted from rare glazed stones, rise majestically, resembling a golden barrier stretching across the horizon. It's both intimidating and alluring. A moat, easily 10 feet wide, surrounds the city. Locals call it the Golden Dragon River, built by Emperor Chu himself who, using his nascent soul power, drew water from the Yanjiang River when the city was completed. Crossing the moat, you can see a faint halo enveloping the entire glazed imperial city. Legend says this halo emanates from a 5th-level formation. Its power is unmatched in Yanzhou, making the glazed imperial city virtually impenetrable. The area inside and outside the city teems with activity, an endless flow of people coming and going. Shops and restaurants line the streets, bustling with pedestrians creating a lively, noisy atmosphere. After returning their carriage to the inn, Zhou Yiqiao and his companions headed to the Xianwei army camp. He pointed to a tent and said, while the Xianwei army is made up of independent cultivators, there are rules. I have to go in alone from here on out. Zhou Yiqiao nodded, clasped his hands in respect, and entered the tent under Zhang Xiongda's watchful eye. Inside, 3 foundation building monks were drinking tea and chatting. Seeing Zhou Yiqiao, a stranger, enter, they asked in surprise, "What brings you here, friend?" Zhou Yiqiao wasn't surprised. Zhang Xiongda had briefed him on the Xianwei army. It wasn't time for open recruitment, so their confusion was understandable. He pulled out a bronze medal from his storage bag and handed it to the monk who had spoken. "Zhang Xiongda recommended me to join the Xianwei army. This is my ID. Please take a look." The monk took the medal, smiling. "Ah, Zhang Xiongda sent you. That makes sense. He always looks for talented people to join us. You must be pretty good among the independent cultivators." After checking the medal and confirming its authenticity, he returned it to Zhou Yiqiao. Zhou Yiqiao, not wanting to presume upon their acquaintance, simply took the medal respectfully and said with a wry smile, "I'm not that powerful. Zhang Xiongda just saw me use some tricks and mistakenly thought I was skillful." The 3 monks chuckled, not suspecting anything. The oldest, a white-bearded man with the highest cultivation level, spoke. "It wouldn't be the first time he's overestimated someone, but joining the Xianwei army is a step up from being a lone wolf. Regardless, we're colleagues now. We should tell you the rules up front to avoid any trouble later." Zhou Yiqiao quickly clasped his fists in a respectful bow. "Thank you for the guidance. I'm all ears." The old man nodded approvingly. "First, fighting within the army is strictly forbidden. Disciplinary violations are punishable by death, no exceptions. Second, aside from those who die in battle, you must complete 1 assignment per month. Otherwise, you'll lose military merits. Finally, as long as you follow the rules, the Xianwei army provides regular salary and training resources." The old man spoke at length, finishing after half an hour. Zhou Yiqiao listened attentively, nodding and memorizing everything. When the old man stopped, he offered a compliment. "You've explained everything perfectly. I appreciate the information." The old man laughed. "Ha, you're too kind. You're new, so you're probably unfamiliar with everything. Zhang Xiongda is still waiting outside. Have him show you around the next couple of days, get your bearings, and meet your future comrades." Zhou Yiqiao thanked them repeatedly and left the tent. Seeing Zhang Xiongda waiting outside, he thanked him again. "Sorry for keeping you waiting, brother Zhang. You've been out here for a long time." Zhang Xiongda waved his hand, put his arm around Zhou Yiqiao's shoulders, and said, "We're friends, and I invited you to join the Xianwei army, so we should help each other out. I've been recruiting independent cultivators for years, so don't mention it. You have a few days before you officially start. I'll take you to Xianxia, everyone in the capital raves about it." Zhou Yiqiao agreed, following Zhang Xiongda as they headed towards the northwest of the imperial capital. The Chu Emperor's palace was in the north, so a restaurant that close must be really good. Xianxia was 7 stories tall and lavishly decorated. The characters for Xian on the plaque were elegantly calligraphic with dragons and phoenixes. The first floor was the main hall, for regular patrons. The second floor had private rooms, mainly for cultivators. The third floor was more exclusive, reserved for people of high status. It was expensive, each meal costing a fortune in spiritual stones. The usefulness of the higher floors was only known to the emperor's family and the highest masters. Zhou Yiqiao followed Zhang Xiongda into Xianxia and was amazed by the sight. The huge lobby was packed, with nearly 1,000 people drinking and chatting at the tables by the window. Zhang Xiongda led Zhou Yiqiao straight to a private room on the second floor. The second floor was much quieter than the bustling hall. They followed a server to a private room, where Zhang Xiongda ordered a feast. They chatted while eating, and Zhou Yiqiao learned many important details from Zhang Xiongda. After dinner, Zhou Yiqiao said goodbye and booked a room at a nearby inn. The day of his assignment arrived soon. At the Xianwei army camp, Zhang Xiongda took him to the assignment office. After briefly reviewing Zhou Yiqiao's file, the monk at the desk handed him a jade slip containing available positions and said, "All the vacant positions are in this jade slip. You can choose whichever you prefer." Zhou Yiqiao took the jade slip, thanked him, and focused his consciousness into the jade slip. After a few moments, he handed it back with a smile. Actually, I'm a second-level alchemist. There are many positions related to alchemy in the jade slip. Could you recommend a suitable one? Hearing that Zhou Yiqiao was a second-level alchemist, the other man's attitude instantly changed. He took the jade slip with a smile. I didn't realize you were an alchemist. Let me think about this and find the perfect role for you. Chapter 84 Mr. Luo. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After assuring him, the man pressed a jade slip to his forehead, closed his eyes, and meditated for a while. Opening them, he said to Zhou Yiqiao, alchemy is rare among independent cultivators, let alone a second-level alchemist like yourself. Right now, alchemist positions are open. If you're looking for a promotion, I suggest you apply at the alchemy workshop. If you prefer a more relaxed schedule, you could guard the spiritual plant warehouse. Zhou Yiqiao, wanting to avoid conflict, showed his bronze status badge and said, I'm used to doing my own thing. I'll take the spiritual plant warehouse. The man accepted this without suspicion. While most in the Xianxia army were ambitious, some valued stability. He wasn't about to pressure Zhou Yiqiao, he took Zhou Yiqiao's badge, updated it with his new position, and handed it back. Report to the warehouse, then. The location is on your identity token. Thank you, Zhou Yiqiao said, accepting the token. No problem. Just remember me when you make it big, alright? The man replied with a smile, watching Zhou Yiqiao leave. Following the token's directions, Zhou Yiqiao soon reached a large hall. Halt! What's your business? Two stern guards blocked his path. Calmly, Zhou Yi produced his identity token and handed it over. I'm the newly appointed guard for the spiritual plant warehouse. The warehouse guard? You're the new alchemist who joined the Xianxia army. The guard examined the token, his attitude changing to respectful. One moment, sir. The warehouse is a secure area, I need to notify them. The guard returned the token, bowed, and hurried into the hall. He returned shortly. This way, please. The guard gestured and led Zhou Yiqiao to a closed stone gate. Deacon Luo, the new guard is here, the guard announced, knocking twice. A gravelly voice replied from within, let him in. The guard turned to Zhou Yiqiao, bowing. This is a secure area, I can't enter. You'll have to go in alone. Thank you for the escort, Zhou Yiqiao replied, bowing and watching the guard leave before entering the stone chamber. The chamber was vast, hundreds of feet wide. Giant wooden shelves lined the walls, each holding rows of spiritual plants of various shapes. 3 massive black and red pillars stood in the center, each over 30 feet tall, topped with carved dragons and phoenixes that emitted a faint light, clearly a magical barrier. Zhou Yiqiao scanned the room and walked slowly towards the back, where he found a heavy black iron door. Clunk. The door creaked open, and Zhou Yiqiao stepped inside. More rows of wooden frames filled the room, the spiritual plants here visibly superior to those outside. An old man floated in the air before a frame, counting the plants. Without looking back, he said, it's rare to see an alchemist who joins the Xianxia army without being arrogant. Even rarer to see one willing to work in the spiritual plant warehouse. I'm Luo Chang'an, the inspector and deacon here. Call me Mr. Luo. The old man descended and approached Zhou Yiqiao. He was thin, with white hair and beard, loose skin, and hollow cheeks. His muddy eyes lacked any sharpness, and his aura was that of a mortal nearing death, obscuring his true power. Junior Zhou Yiqiao greets Uncle Luo, Zhou Yiqiao said respectfully, bowing to the old man. The old man's eyes widened slightly, a glint of light flashing within as he stared intently at Zhou Yiqiao. The Emperor of Chu allows demonic practices within his territory, but forbids the needless killing of innocents. Don't forget that, young man, or you'll be in trouble. Alarm bells rang in Zhou Yiqiao's head, but Mr. Luo smiled. No need to hide it. You're not inherently demonic, but you're skilled with demonic techniques and have some talent. I don't care about your past, as long as you can help me guard this warehouse. Mr. Luo tossed a storage ring and a jade talisman to Zhou Yiqiao, then returned to his post, counting the plants. The ring contains a Buddhist technique to suppress your inner darkness without attracting attention. From now on, all but the rarest elixirs and ingredients that come into this warehouse are under your care. If you have trouble, crush this talisman to contact me. Still shaken, Zhou Yiqiao forced himself to respond, hands raised. I will follow your instructions, Uncle Luo. Mr. Luo waved a hand dismissively. All right, return to the barracks and report for duty tomorrow. Zhou Yiqiao bowed again and retreated through the iron door, leaving the stone chamber. Leaving the warehouse, Zhou Yiqiao officially moved into the Xianwei army camp. He scanned the barracks with his spiritual sense, ensuring no one was watching. After activating the protective barrier, he eagerly retrieved the Buddhist technique from the storage ring. The technique was called the Art of Cowardly Evil, and its only purpose was to calm the mind and dispel negative energies. Zhou Yiqiao carefully studied the art, confirming its safety before memorizing it and beginning to practice. The Art of Cowardly Evil was simple and peaceful. Despite Zhou Yiqiao's caution, he had mastered it by morning, feeling his heart, agitated since he began practicing the 7 kills and breaking the cocoon technique, finally calming. Zhou Yiqiao felt relieved. Looking at the pale morning sky, Zhou Yiqiao finished his practice and headed toward the spiritual plant warehouse, officially beginning his cultivation path in the Xianwei army. Chapter 85 Advancement. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhou Yiqiao sat in his tent, face blank, his heart still. His skin was torn, blood soaking the futon beneath him crimson red. A powerful golden light enveloped him, slowly mending his wounds. He remained motionless, focusing inward. He saw spiritual energy surging in his dantian, like a boiling cauldron. Threads of light gold energy raced through his meridians, converging at his dantian. This power accumulated, soon reaching the limit of his dantian's capacity. A sharp buzz rang out. Zhou Yiqiao became a bottomless pit, the pale golden energy around him pouring in. The energy already stored in his dantian began to spin wildly, causing him intense pain, yet he remained still as a statue as the process continued. Then, a boom. The golden energy exploded outward in a tidal wave. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. He could hear the wind rustling the leaves, the air itself vibrating. His injuries, which had been healing slowly, suddenly began to regenerate at an incredible rate, like a dead tree bursting into bloom. Within minutes, he was completely healed. Zhou Yiqiao slowly opened his eyes and exhaled. After all that, I've finally reached the mid-stage of foundation building. That he released his spiritual sense, extending it over 20 miles, giving him a clear view of the entire Xianwei army camp. The god-splitting technique is truly a rare soul-forging skill. While it hasn't increased the range of my spiritual sense, its intensity has leaped forward. Maybe now, basic illusions won't work on me. Feeling no fatigue as his spiritual sense expanded, Zhou Yiqiao marveled at the power of the god-splitting technique. He withdrew his spiritual sense, stepped out of the tent, and used the perfected quicksand movement technique to rush towards the Lingji warehouse. It had been a year since he joined the Xianwei army. Besides refining elixirs each month to fulfill his duties, Zhou Yiqiao spent most of his time between the camp and the warehouse. This regular routine allowed him to focus all his energy on cultivation. In addition to his progress with the god-splitting technique and quicksand movement technique, he had also mastered the first level of the breath condensation technique. Now he could mask his true cultivation level, even from those in the later stages of foundation building. Most importantly, guarding the spiritual plant warehouse had allowed him to collect many spiritual plants and herbs for his moonstone space. He had also gathered a stockpile of foundation building elixirs, especially nourishing and enhancing ones, and mastered their refining techniques. Furthermore, his monthly salary and training resources from the Xianwei army were worth about 300 spirit stones, giving him nearly 3,600 in a year. While a drop in the bucket compared to his total resources, it was still a vast improvement over the Yari sect. This showed the strength of the Chu state, attracting many independent cultivators to join the Xianwei army. The Lingji warehouse was several miles from his camp, but he reached it quickly, covering the distance in less than a few minutes with his improved movement technique. Besides Mr. Luo, Zhou Yiqiao was the only one who worked there. The guard, already briefed, confirmed his identity and let him in. Mr. Luo was counting elixirs as usual. As soon as Zhou Yiqiao entered, he said without turning around. Not bad. Reaching the mid-stage of foundation building at 30 is impressive for an independent cultivator in Yenzhou. Zhou Yiqiao bowed respectfully to Mr. Luo's back. I was lucky to advance, thanks to your guidance. Without your help this year, I wouldn't have progressed so quickly. Mr. Luo waved dismissively. It had nothing to do with me. Your progress is the result of your own hard work. Then he changed the subject. A large shipment of spiritual plants arrived today. Your task is to register them according to their grade. Zhou Yiqiao agreed and began sorting through the plants. 2 hours later, he finished classifying and registering the plants and prepared to return to his quarters. Wait, as Zhou Yiqiao stepped out, Mr. Luo stopped him again. Yes, Mr. Luo. Mr. Luo, like an ordinary old man, stretched his back and said. You've done well this year. You can move here starting tomorrow. This warehouse is in a secluded area with abundant spiritual energy and a comfortable environment. It's perfect for your cultivation. Zhou Yiqiao was surprised. Before he could respond, Mr. Luo continued. I need to leave the Xianwei army for a while. During my absence, you'll be in charge of the Lingji warehouse. Take this silver token. Mr. Luo produced a silver-white token and tossed it to Zhou Yiqiao. The token felt warm and smooth, like a piece of jade, and was engraved with Lingji warehouse. This is the warehouse deacon's token. Except for the top-grade spiritual plants in the iron room that only I can access, you can manage the rest with this token. If you encounter any problems you can't handle, go to Commander Chenangua. If he can't solve it, crush the jade talisman I gave you, and I'll return as soon as possible. Mr. Luo explained. Understood, Zhou Yiqiao replied respectfully. Alright, you're dismissed. Mr. Luo nodded, waving him away. The next day, Zhou Yiqiao packed his belongings and officially moved into the Lingji warehouse. With Mr. Luo gone, he was solely responsible for managing the spiritual plants. Many alchemists from shops and workshops that supplied plants to the Xianwei army tried to befriend him. Knowing he was only temporarily filling Mr. Luo's shoes, Zhou Yiqiao avoided letting it go to his head. He politely declined their advances and spent the day cultivating in peace and quiet. Some time later, Xianxia, whom he hadn't seen in a while, approached Zhou Yiqiao. Chapter 86 Backdoor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Still in that private room upstairs at Xianxia, Zhou Yiqiao chuckled, looking at Xianxia across the table. So, Zhang, what brings you here today? Xianxia smiled, pulled a brocade box from inside his coat, and opened it to reveal a vibrant green spirit grass. Zhou, this Ninggang grass is great for helping cultivators solidify their spiritual power. It strengthens the body and toughens the meridians. I thought it might help you in your future training. Hope you'll accept it. He slid the box across the table. Zhou Yiqiao sized him up. He glanced at the grass, closed the box, and pushed it back. Frowning, he said, a little annoyed, Zhang, what's this about? If you need a favor, just ask. This is a bit much. Seeing the rejection, Xianxia panicked. No, you've got it all wrong. This gift is just from me as a friend. Please don't take it the wrong way. Zhou Yiqiao just shook his head and started to get up. Seeing him so set on leaving, Xianxia quickly stopped him, took back the grass with a sheepish look, and explained, Okay, look, I'll level with you. I'm an old buddy with the shopkeeper at Qingxin Pavilion. When General Luo temporarily put you in charge of the spirit plant warehouse a few days ago, word got out. I think someone mentioned I was the one who recommended you to the Xianwei army. Suddenly, everyone and their brother started showing up at my place with cultivation resources. This guy just happened to be an old friend. Zhou Yiqiao smiled faintly, waiting for the rest. Xianxia, relieved that he wasn't completely off the hook, hurried on. He really badgered me, so I told him I'd at least try. If you weren't interested, I'd send him packing along with the rest. So just consider this spirit grass my way of apologizing. Please, take it. While Zhou Yiqiao understood Zhang Xiongda's position, he still wasn't going to accept the grass. For one thing, while it was rare, he didn't really need it, and secondly, even if Zhang Xiongda claimed it was just an apology, accepting it meant owing him a favor. If Zhang Xiongda then wanted him to ease up a little on the spirit plant management, he'd be stuck. Thinking this through, Zhou Yiqiao brought up General Luo. You know how powerful General Luo is, right? Zhang Xiongda nodded silently. Every commander in the Xianwei army had warned their subordinates that General Luo, the deacon of the spirit plant warehouse, was a force to be reckoned with, and deserved the utmost respect. He chose me to oversee the spirit plants because he trusts me. I can't go behind his back doing shady deals, can I? No offense, Zhang. Zhou Yiqiao's words made it clear his intentions had been seen through. Now that Luo was involved, Zhang Xiongda had no choice but to drop the matter. Seeing his plan fail, Zhang Xiongda immediately plastered on a smile, poured 2 glasses of spirit wine, and raised one in invitation, hoping to salvage the situation. If you don't want it, you don't want it. No pressure. Just hope you'll think of me. After they both drank, Zhang Xiongda continued, actually, I wanted to say goodbye. Word is that true Lord Qingjin of the Yuri sect in the Liang Kingdom was killed in one shot by some mysterious powerhouse. The whole war has tilted in favor of the Ghost Alliance. The Emperor of Chu has been watching this internal squabble for a while, and my team is headed back to Liang Kingdom to gather intel. Zhou Yiqiao hadn't expected to hear about the Yuri sect so soon after leaving, and raised an eyebrow in surprise. Really? That happened? Yeah. They say the Yuri sect is in chaos. The 3-way power balance they were barely holding onto has completely fallen apart. It probably won't last long with all the trouble inside and out. Zhang Xiongda nodded. Zhou Yiqiao had left the Yuri sect, so he wasn't particularly interested. After getting the gist of the situation, he steered the conversation elsewhere. They drank for a while, and by the time they left Xianxia, the sun was setting. The evening glow cast a golden hue on everyone rushing about. Safe travels, Zhang. They clasped hands, and Zhou Yiqiao watched Zhang Xiongda go before turning around to head back to the Xianwei army camp, but as soon as he turned, he nearly ran into 2 men on horseback. Both wore black armor with a blazing sun emblem on their chests and carried long swords that gave off a chill. Zhou Yiqiao frowned. Who goes there? Blocking the young master's path. Insolent. Due to constantly using the breath condensation technique, Zhou Yiqiao's cultivation appeared to be only in the early stages of foundation building. The 2 men scoffed, waved their reins, and charged towards Zhou Yiqiao, completely disregarding him. Zhou Yiqiao narrowed his eyes and a cold smile played on his lips. Using the quicksand movement technique, he easily dodged their attacks. The 2 men, embarrassed by missing, flew into a rage. They began casting spells, urging their steeds forward, but then a young voice called from a nearby carriage. Stop it. There was a moment of silence, and then a slightly effeminate voice said, apologize to this fellow Taoist. The 2 men were clearly under orders. Although reluctant to lose face, they bowed their heads to Zhou Yiqiao and apologized respectfully. I am Nangong Feiyu, young master of the Nangong family. My guards acted rashly. I apologize. Zhou Yiqiao saw the carriage curtain lift, and a slender man leaned out. I haven't asked the name of this fellow Taoist. Not wanting to make an enemy of someone who was being friendly, Zhou Yiqiao nodded slightly and said politely, Zhou from Yiqiao. Nangong Feiyu's face lit up. So you're the one General Luo entrusted to guard the Xianwei army's spirit plant warehouse. I've heard a lot about you. Zhou Yiqiao hadn't expected this temporary position to make him famous, and frowned inwardly. Seeing his silence, Nangong Feiyu explained, my family runs the largest spirit plant trading company in Chu State, so naturally we've heard of you, Zhou. I see you're heading back to the Xianwei army's camp. As it happens, I'm going south too. Why don't you join us? Chapter 87 Party Members. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Nangong Feiyu's eyes burned as he stared at Zhou Yiqiao, sizing him up like prey. His voice, usually a little on the soft side, now had a melodic quality, like a spring breeze. Zhou Yiqiao heard the invitation and politely declined without hesitation. My duties with the Xianwei army prevent me from fraternizing outside the ranks. I appreciate the offer, Master Nangong. Nangong Feiyu knew this was a convenient excuse, but he didn't call him on it. What a pity. In that case, I won't keep you any longer, Daoist fellow Zhou. Zhou Yiqiao sighed in relief, bowing slightly. Thank you, Master Nangong. With that, he used the quicksand movement technique and sped away. Nangong Feiyu narrowed his eyes, watching Zhou Yiqiao. His lips moved silently, as if mumbling something even his guards couldn't hear. Once Zhou Yiqiao was gone, Nangong Feiyu settled back into his chariot and told the guards to move on. Zhou Yiqiao, of course, had no idea what Nangong Feiyu was whispering. He hurried back to the Lingji warehouse. Arriving about 15 minutes later, he spent the next half-hour cataloging the newly arrived herbs, then headed back to his quarters in the warehouse. After his usual evening meditation, it was time. Breaking from his routine, Zhou Yiqiao left the Xianwei army camp again, a dark shadow speeding north toward the imperial city. It was a clear night, the stars bright above. Outside the north city gate, 4 guards, all masters of qi refining, kept close. Watch over the gates. A whooshing sound cut through the quiet, and a figure walked right past them. The 4 guards started to bow, but Nangong Feiyu waved them off. He took a step forward, blurring into dozens of afterimages. In a flash, the afterimages were gone, and Nangong Feiyu disappeared into the night. The guards watched him vanish, then stood motionless as if nothing had happened, quietly guarding the gate. A short time later, Nangong Feiyu stood at the top of the tower, gazing into the darkness. Soon, Zhou Yiqiao appeared below. Nangong Feiyu jumped down and greeted him with a bow. Daoist fellow Zhou, you came as promised. I'm honored. Zhou Yiqiao was cold, his hand never leaving his storage bag. He wasn't interested in pleasantries. Cut the small talk. What do you want in this deserted place? Nangong Feiyu chuckled, unbothered by Zhou Yiqiao's rudeness. He didn't answer directly, instead posing a question of his own. Do you know how many sons the Emperor of Chu has these days? Zhou Yiqiao felt a knot form in his stomach and wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. He frowned. I have no interest in royal affairs. He cut Nangong Feiyu off. This wasn't a simple deal, there was something else going on. Seeing Zhou Yiqiao turn to leave, Nangong Feiyu didn't panic. He watched him go, then said, have you considered that taking over for Mr. Luo might be a one-way trip? Zhou Yiqiao stopped about 100 yards away. He turned slowly, staring at Nangong Feiyu with cold eyes. I don't know Mr. Luo that well, but I know he's not one for politics. Nangong Feiyu smiled, his expression unchanged. Mr. Luo doesn't care about fame or fortune, but his position and his name aren't things you can simply ignore. Even in the darkness, Nangong Feiyu could see Zhou Yiqiao's expression soften. The Chu Emperor's 3 sons are all extraordinary. The eldest, Luo Jincheng, and the second, Luo Jinen, are barely over 40 and already in the late stages of foundation building. The youngest, Luo Jinshen, is even more talented. He just turned 15 last month and he's already in the early stages of foundation building. The eldest prince is the son of the current queen, making him the heir apparent. The second prince is from a concubine, but his mother is Fairy Huanlu, the famous beauty from Yenzhou and the emperor's favorite. The young prince is incredibly gifted and studies at the Central Continent Holy Sex Tingfeng Academy. The emperor values him highly. Despite his age, he's a contender for the throne. Hold on, Zhou Yiqiao interrupted. The emperor reached the late stage of yuanying when he was just over 400. Yuanying monks live for thousands of years. Shouldn't he be in his prime? Why are the princes already fighting over the throne? Nangong Feiyu sighed. The kingdom of Chu is a dynasty of cultivators. The next ruler must be a good leader, care about the people, and, most importantly, be a strong cultivator. Every emperor must name an heir to oversee the country after 150 years on the throne. Most of the royal cultivation resources will then be focused on that prince to ensure that he can reach the nascent soul realm and maintain stability after the emperor passes. The emperor has been in power for over 130 years now. It's time for the princes to start building their power. After hearing Nangong Feiyu's explanation, Zhou Yiqiao understood the Chu royal family a little better. After a moment, he asked, "So Mr. Luo is a member of the royal family, and the spiritual plants stored in the Xianwei army's warehouse are meant for one of the princes?" "That's right." Nangong Feiyu clapped, seeming impressed. "Luo is the emperor's elder brother. He's extremely talented, just like the third prince. But Mr. Luo doesn't care for politics and prefers to focus on cultivating immortality, so he stayed out of the succession battle. After the emperor took the throne, he gave Mr. Luo the job of guarding the Lingji warehouse. The fact that this warehouse is in the Xianwei army camp, which is made up of independent cultivators, has to do with the emperor's overall plan. Chapter 88 Assassination. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After the Holy Emperor took the throne, he launched sweeping government reforms, seeking out talented individuals, including a large number of skilled independent cultivators, who flocked to his banner. To emphasize how much he valued these cultivators, the Holy Emperor created a special unit called the Xianwei Army. He also allowed soldiers within the Xianwei Army to trade their military achievements for spiritual herbs stored in the Spirit Plant Warehouse. This move was a total win-win for the Holy Emperor. It not only won over the independent cultivators but also provided a dedicated force to guard the Spirit Plant Warehouse. Nangong Feiyu laid out all the details about the Xianwei Army clearly. Hearing this, Zhou Yiqiao voiced his concerns. "If the Spirit Plant Warehouse is so important, how did someone with my low cultivation and lack of connections end up getting the job?" Nangong Feiyu didn't answer directly, giving a vague explanation. "Someone of Mr. Luo's stature sees things differently than foundation establishment cultivators like us. All I know is that before you, Taoist Zhou, no independent cultivator with alchemy skills was willing to work in the Spirit Plant Warehouse." Seeing Nangong Feiyu was avoiding the subject, Zhou Yiqiao didn't press it, raising an eyebrow in response. Instead, he inquired about Nangong Feiyu's real reason for this secret meeting. "Taoist Nangong went to so much trouble for this private meeting. Surely it's not just a friendly reminder, is it?" Nangong Feiyu smiled and waved his hand. "Taoist Zhou, you're as sharp as a tack. The truth is, I'm here to ask you to join our cause and serve the little prince." Aha! Zhou Yiqiao thought, but feigning confusion, he asked. "You flatter me, Taoist Nangong. I'm just a lone cultivator with a foundation building level. I doubt I can influence something as important as the succession." Zhou Yiqiao politely declined. Nangong Feiyu seemed to have anticipated this response, remaining silent for a moment before speaking. "Taoist Zhou, hold your horses. Join the little prince's forces, and you'll not only have access to cultivation resources, but also a chance to ride his coattails when he ascends the throne." Seeing Nangong Feiyu persist, Zhou Yiqiao turned icy. "Taoist Nangong, I appreciate the offer, but no. After so many years as an independent cultivator, I know it's best to stay in my lane. A small fry like me has no business meddling in dynastic affairs. Farewell." With that, Zhou Yiqiao clasped his fists, ignored Nangong Feiyu's darkening expression, and sped off using the quicksand movement technique. Watching Zhou Yiqiao disappear, Nangong Feiyu's smile vanished, replaced by a chilling look. He curled his lip and muttered to himself. "Fine, have it your way." With a flick of his sleeve, he vanished into the night. Back at his residence in the Spirit Plant Warehouse, Zhou Yiqiao paced anxiously by the window, staring out at the darkness with mixed feelings. Even though he had clearly rejected Nangong Feiyu's invitation, he still felt uneasy. Zhou Yiqiao knew that the power struggle between the princes was a deadly game, and without connections, a firm no was the safest bet. But Nangong Feiyu's barely concealed murderous intent left Zhou Yiqiao. Feeling a sense of danger, sighing at the harsh realities of the world, Zhou Yiqiao shook his head with a wry smile. As he was lost in thought, a rapid knock on the door shattered the silence. "Who is it?" Zhou Yiqiao frowned and called out, he lived in the outer hall of the stone chamber, choosing this location because it was usually deserted. Hearing Zhou Yiqiao's cautious question, the knocker hastily replied. I'm a servant of the Nangong family. Young Master Nangong sent me with a gift for Mr. Zhou. Zhou Yiqiao focused his spiritual sense and scanned the door, confirming that a servant with qi refining Dzogchen cultivation stood there, holding a square box. I'm in a critical stage of practice and can't be disturbed. Just leave it at the door, I'll check it later. Zhou Yiqiao wanted nothing more to do with the Nangong family, offering a flimsy excuse to get rid of the servant. However, Nangong Feiyu's servant was insistent. Ignoring Zhou Yiqiao's dismissal, he stubbornly demanded to deliver it personally. Master Zhou, please, I have to hand this to you directly, or young master will kill me when I return. Seeing this stubbornness, Zhou Yiqiao's heart turned cold, and he snapped. Put it down now and leave. If you disrupt my cultivation, I'll show you no mercy. He released a burst of magic power as a warning. Unexpectedly, before Zhou Yiqiao could attack, the defensive formations in the house flared to life with a loud crack, and the door burst open with a massive force. The Nangong family servant stood there with a sinister grin, holding a shimmering orb in his right hand, clearly designed to break through magical barriers. The servant strode in, his cultivation level rising rapidly until he reached the mid-stage of foundation building. He pulled a head from the wooden box, threw it at Zhou Yiqiao, and sneered. A gift from my young master. Cherish it. You'll need a friend on the road to hell. The head landed at his feet. Zhou Yiqiao looked closer and recognized Zhang Xiongda, whom he had just said goodbye to earlier that day. Thanks to his alertness, Zhou Yiqiao had already summoned the Sikong Pan the moment he saw Zhang Xiongda's head. He channeled all his spiritual power into it, blocking the servant's sudden attack. Killing a Xianwei army soldier. You're breaking the law. Zhou Yiqiao deliberately amplified his spiritual power and shouted, hoping to alert his comrades for help. The servant seemed confident, not attacking immediately after the failed strike. He looked at Zhou Yiqiao and mocked. The law. Once the prince takes control, my Nangong family will be in charge, and young Master Nangong is the law. Young Master offered you one last chance. Work for the little prince, and provide his cronies with elixirs from the spirit plant warehouse ahead of time, and I'll spare your life. The servant paused, staring at Zhou Yiqiao, and added. But if you refuse, I'll kill you right here, and the little prince will just find another warehouse deacon in the Xianwei army. Master Nangong says, don't make a mistake. Chapter 89 Counterattack. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Zhou Yiqiao heard the servant's words, he paused, lost in thought. The servant, still brimming with confidence, continued, don't bother waiting for the Xianwei army to figure things out. I've erected an isolation circle. Only a golden core powerhouse could even sense something's amiss. In that case, I owe you a debt, Taoist friend. Zhou Yiqiao cut him off, his pupils darkening. A strange smile twisted his usually cold face. The servant's internal alarms blared at the sight of that expression. He instantly channeled mana from his dantian, summoning a suit of golden armor to clad his body, bracing for an attack, but before his defenses fully materialized, a short, green blade materialized out of thin air above his head. The silver sword shimmered with a layer of white mist, radiating a chilling aura of utter annihilation. The servant's eyes widened, his eyelids twitching, sweat pouring down his face as he stared at the blade. He trembled, all arrogance vanished in the face of death. He dropped to his knees with a thud. Spare me, spare my life. He whimpered. Zhou Yiqiao, still seated cross-legged on the bed, propped his head with his hand, gazing down at the servant. His lips barely moved. Too late. The words were a mere whisper, but the energy around the green blade shifted. Dozens of crimson rays erupted from it, snaking down towards the servant. The bloody lights were impossibly fast, wrapping around the servant's body in a heartbeat, piercing his flesh and blood. Instantly, the servant convulsed violently, howling in agony. Zhou Yiqiao watched his struggles with detached indifference, regarding him as nothing more than an insect. The servant's cries grew weaker, fading until only a mutilated corpse remained at Zhou Yiqiao's feet. The 7 kills sword technique, truly a devastating derivative of the 7 kills technique. Its power is undeniable. Zhou Yiqiao murmured, surveying the carnage. He'd just unleashed the 7-killing sword technique. Though only at its first level of mastery, combined with the high-grade autumn water blade, its destructive potential was terrifying. Having dealt with the servant, Zhou Yiqiao turned his gaze to Zhang Xiongda's head. After a long, silent stare, he sighed, reached out, and closed Zhang Xiongda's eyes, then incinerated the remains with a flick of his hand. Despite their limited interaction since Zhou Yiqiao joined the Xianwei army, Zhang Xiongda had been the one to offer him a path. Zhou Yiqiao was overwhelmed by the realization that just hours ago, they had shared drinks and camaraderie, and now they were separated by the veil of death, but he couldn't afford to wallow. He grabbed the servant's storage bag, probed it with his spiritual sense, and quickly extracted a plain sword. Avoiding vital organs, he plunged it into his own chest without hesitation. The blade pierced through, bright red blood gushing to stain the floor. With a grunt, Zhou Yiqiao used his spiritual power to grip the hilt, yanked the sword free, and stemmed the bleeding. Then, he headed out. The isolation circle, weakened by the loss of its master's spiritual energy, was now fragile. Zhou Yiqiao channeled energy into the Gale sword, unleashing 2 quick blasts that shattered it. As soon as the formation was dispelled, 2 patrolling guards discovered the seriously wounded Zhou Yiqiao. "Deacon Zhou! What happened?" they exclaimed, rushing to support him. Zhou Yiqiao shook his head, his voice steady. "Someone broke into the Lingji warehouse. Reported to the commanders." One guard ran off to alert the others, while the remaining one funneled spiritual energy into Zhou Yiqiao's body, trying to aid his recovery. Within 15 minutes, a group of 4 or 5 arrived. Leading them was a man in purple robes and fine silk. Tall and handsome, he looked every bit the pampered nobleman. His face was etched with worry. His eyes scanned the scene before settling on Zhou Yiqiao, who was seated in meditation. "How did you get injured? Do you know who did this?" he asked, approaching Zhou Yiqiao. "Commander, I was ordered by Master Luo to guard the elixir warehouse. I have been responsible for guarding and protecting the safety of the warehouse. I was practicing in my room today. Suddenly, a monk in the middle stage of foundation building broke into the room and attacked me. I managed to kill him, but not without injuries. The body is still inside. As for who he was, I have no idea." Zhou Yiqiao said respectfully, looking up. "Show me the body." The purple-robed man frowned and waved his hand. Zhou Yiqiao led the man and his entourage to his room. The mangled corpse of the servant, drenched in blood, immediately met their eyes. The blood had seeped into the room, filling it with the pungent smell of blood, changing the initial impressions of Zhou Yiqiao for many. "This is a servant of the Nangong family," the purple-robed man stated after examining a piece of clothing pulled from the blood-soaked ground. "The Nangong family? Why would they attack the Xianwei army's spiritual plant warehouse?" a burly man in armor behind him asked. He was short and stocky, his complexion dark, a sign of someone who spent his life in the military camp. The purple-robed man ignored the question, pondered for a moment, then summoned the 2 guards and whispered instructions to them, ordering them to dispose of the body. He then directed the burly man to closely monitor the warehouse's security and investigate the Nangong family's motives. After giving these orders, the purple-robed man offered a few words of comfort to Zhou Yiqiao before leading the group away. He obviously had more pressing matters to address. Chapter 90 Experience. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After the guy in the purple robes left, it was just Zhou Yiqiao and the beefy dude in armor. The armored guy gave Zhou Yiqiao a bow, his face sincere as he apologized. "I'm Chen Anghua, commander of the Xianwei army. Security around the Xianwei camp is my responsibility. What happened to you? Well, it's on me. So, I'm here to say sorry." Zhou Yiqiao quickly waved it off. "Commander, no need. We're soldiers, following orders. Guarding the spirit plant warehouse is my duty. Lucky for me, nothing major happened. Seriously, don't sweat it." Chen Anghua grinned, even more relieved, and thanked him again. "That's mighty generous of you. I appreciate you covering for my guys. He glanced around at the houses near the bridge, then reached into a pouch on his belt and pulled out a compass. It was black and white, covered in complicated carvings. Xianxia made a hand sign and channeled energy into the compass. Suddenly, it glowed with a faint blue light that flickered a few times before fading. He tucked the compass back into his pouch, clapped Zhou Yiqiao on the shoulder, and handed him a bottle of elixir. I've reinforced the wards around your place. I know you're laid up. I'll have someone clean up around here. Luo put you under my protection, and I take responsibility for that ambush. Take this elixir. It'll help you heal up. Consider it my apology. The Nangong family started something with the Xianwei army today. Lines have been drawn. Don't worry, you won't suffer this wound for nothing. Zhou Yiqiao took the elixir, knowing he couldn't refuse the gesture, and thanked Xianxia. Thanks a bunch, Commander Chen. I appreciate it. Xianxia waved his hand, exchanged a few more pleasantries, and left the wooden house. He told his men to tidy up the place and headed out. The cleanup crew was fast. After a quick sweep of the room, Zhou Yiqiao thanked them and watched them leave, finally letting out a breath. I hope the Xianwei army can handle the Nangong family's pull. He stashed Xianxia's elixir in his storage bag, took out one of his own healing pills, and settled into a cross-legged position on the bed to recover. Even though Xianxia was someone Mr. Luo trusted, Zhou Yiqiao had learned to be careful over the years. He rarely took elixirs made by others, preferring his own. His constitution was much stronger than most foundation-building cultivators, and he hadn't held back when injuring himself with the knife. In just 3 days, the wound was completely healed. After the attack on the spirit plant warehouse, the security around the Xianwei army camp doubled, with even a few foundation-building cultivators among the guards. Zhou Yiqiao smirked. He didn't believe that some mid-foundation nobody from the Nangong family could sneak into the Xianwei army camp without help. Someone in the Xianwei army was likely loyal to the young Prince Luo Jinshan. If Zhou Yiqiao hadn't had a trick up his sleeve, he would have been just another dead body like Zhang Xiongda. Zhou Yiqiao knew he was a target now, so he didn't dare poke around and stir up more trouble. He stayed put for a month, finally seeing Mr. Luo return. As soon as Mr. Luo was back, Zhou Yiqiao handed over the keys to the spirit plant warehouse. Glad to be rid of that hot potato. Looks like you've had a rough time, Mr. Luo said, a smile on his old face. If I wasn't tougher than I look, you'd be staring at my corpse right now, Zhou Yiqiao said with a wry smile. Why didn't you use the jade charm I gave you? Mr. Luo asked. Things were too dicey. I couldn't wait around for you to come save me, Zhou Yiqiao said, covering up the fact that he was caught completely off guard. Ah. Mr. Luo seemed to buy it. The old man, usually so calm, sighed. It all comes down to greed. I only left for a little while, and they were already plotting to grab the elixirs in the warehouse. Mr. Luo pulled out a yellowed book and handed it to Zhou Yiqiao. This is my fault. I didn't think they were so hungry. This has all my experience refining second-level elixirs. Consider it my apology. Zhou Yiqiao waved his hand. Mr. Luo, no need. I promise to guard the spirit plant warehouse, and that comes with risks. I don't deserve something this valuable. Mr. Luo laughed, pointed a finger between Zhou Yiqiao's eyebrows, and implanted the book's contents directly into his mind. Okay, that's enough. My experience is just some alchemy know-how. I might as well share it with someone who needs it. The die was cast, so Zhou Yiqiao had no choice but to bow to Mr. Luo. In that case, I'll take it. Mr. Luo waved his hand. Don't mention it. I'll go check the supplies in the iron room first. Once you've processed all this, I have something else for you to do. He disappeared. Opportunities like this were rare, so Zhou Yiqiao immediately sat down, closed his eyes, and carefully went over the alchemy experience in his mind. 3 days passed. Finally, Zhou Yiqiao opened his eyes. This is definitely a master alchemist's summary. These insights alone will save me years of hard work. He stood up, stretched, and went to the iron room to see Mr. Luo. Thanks for the gift, Mr. Luo. I learned a lot. The old man was back to his old self, checking the plants on the wooden frame, and said without turning around. I have a favor to ask. I need you to leave the imperial city and go north, to the Chu kingdom. I guarantee, once you're out of the imperial city, the prince's games won't touch you.